I love coding. I love coding a ton, and I especially love coding in C#. So I want to help you learn how to code in C#, and we're going to do that by building a few different projects. But first, in order to make that work, we're going to need certain tools. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it. It's going to go kind of quick. That's okay. Use the pause button and keep up. It'll be fine. The first thing that we need to know is what type of processor you have. And the way we're going to find that out is that you're going to press the Windows key in the lower left corner of your keyboard, or you will click on the Windows icon in the lower left corner of your screen, and then you will type in this PC. When you do that, you will get an option in your results set that says this PC. Go ahead and right-click that. And that will open up a context menu. Go to Properties and click on that. It will open up a window that describes the kind of system that you have. In fact, if you look, there's a section called System, and inside there you will find System Type. It will either say 64-bit operating system or x64-based processor, or something similar but with the numbers x86. This tells us what kind of downloads we need. So remember this number, either x86 or x64. In my case, I will be using x64. Now that we know what processor we have, it's time to download the .NET Developer Kit. This is what we often refer to as an SDK or Software Developer Kit. Go ahead and open up your favorite browser like Chrome, and then in the search bar, type in .NET Developer Kit. Right after the ads, you're going to see a link for .NET SDKs for Visual Studio. Go ahead and click on that link. That's going to take us to a page with a bevy of downloads, and you'll see that there is a .NET Core section and a .NET Framework section. For right now, we want to focus on .NET Core, even though .NET Framework is still relevant. .NET Core is their newest framework, and we want to be working with that. Now, you may be tempted to grab the newest version of the framework, but take a quick and careful look. If it says Preview under the links for the newest version of that framework of .NET Core, then you don't really want that one just yet. When something's in preview, they've just released it and it adds some new features, but it may also introduce new bugs that they haven't found yet. We don't want to do that. We want something stable and proven. So I like to grab the version just beneath that. So go ahead and grab the newest version that is not in preview. Now remember, you looked a moment ago to see what kind of processor you have. I have x64, so I'm going to grab the 64-bit download. But if you have x86, you should click the x86 download, and so on. Always follow that rule going forward. So I'm going to grab the download for the newest version of .NET Core that's not in preview. Once that's downloaded, go ahead and click on the executable, and you're going to get this window that's going to ask for permissions to install. Go ahead and click on the install. All the default settings are perfectly fine. Let it run to its finish. Once the installation is complete, you'll get this window that says the installation was successful, and as long as it doesn't say that there were any errors or any problems, you're undoubtedly okay, and we can move on to getting Visual Studio. Now we're ready to download Visual Studio. What is Visual Studio? It's our Integrated Development Environment, or IDE, and that's really just a fancy term for an application that helps us write code. It allows us to write code with some helpers like highlighted syntax and autofill, but it also allows us to build and test and execute our code. IDEs are super valuable and useful when you're writing code. So we want to get the one that's best for C#, and in this case that would be Visual Studio by Microsoft. And it's totally free. All you have to do is open up your browser and in the search bar type in Visual Studio Community. This will give you a link that will take you to the Microsoft page where you can download their completely free IDE for developing in C#. Now I'm running a Windows box, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that Windows is selected. Of course, if you're running a Mac, select Mac OS and so on, and then go ahead and click Download Visual Studio Community 2017. When you click on that, it's going to give you this executable, and really that's going to install what's called the Visual Studio Installer. That's going to be a tool to help us build Visual Studio in the way that we need it. One of the things that I love about Visual Studio is now, instead of a giant monolithic installation, you can install just the parts you're going to use, and that makes me very happy. Go ahead and run the installer, and you will be faced with several choices or packages that you can add on, and we really care about just two of them. One of them is going to be the .NET Desktop Development. That gives us sort of the groundwork for all of C# development. And we also want Universal Windows Platform Development, right beneath it. This is going to give us the ability to build GUI applications or graphical user interfaces. These are sort of like your typical Windows applications. This is going to give us the opportunity to build a lot of fun applications while we explore C#. Go ahead and install those two things. Also on the side, there may be some additional options that we might want to grab. Go ahead and grab some of the ones that I've checked. Make sure those install. Now this might be kind of a chunky install to start, but going forward, adding new packages will be really fast and really slim. Let this run to completion. When it's done, we'll move on to the next part. Now, before we execute Visual Studio, we need to change one minor setting on our system. Go ahead and press the Windows key or click the Windows icon and type in For Developers Settings. I know that sounds completely weird, but you're going to get this option that says For Developers Settings. Go ahead and click on that. Now, you're going to be presented with three options, and chances are one of the first two options are selected, and that's great, except that we need developer mode. So go ahead and click developer mode, and it's going to ask you if you know what you're doing, and that's perfectly fine. Go ahead and click yes. When that's done, we'll be able to run our applications as if we are launching them from the store, even though we're launching them from Visual Studio. All right, now we're ready to launch Visual Studio and to build our first application and give it a go. Now, we want to create a new project, and we can do that one of three ways. We can go to File, and we can go to New Project, or if you notice, this actually has hotkeys associated with it, and I love using my hotkeys. But if you look on the Start page, there's actually a link that you can click that says Create New Project. Now, if we click that, it's going to open up the New Project dialog. Now, normally I would use the hotkeys, Control-Shift-N, but this time I'm going to click the Create New link, and you can do any one of these three methods. I don't really care. Once you do that, you will get the Create New Project dialog, and when that opens up, you'll have so many options in front of you based on what packages you actually installed. Now, I have a bunch of options because I do all sorts of different projects. Now, you may have different options, and that's perfectly fine as long as when you click on C# and you go to Windows Universal, you can see Blank App Universal Windows. That's going to build a UWP or Universal Windows Platform application. So go ahead and select that. Now, toward the bottom, you'll have a few options. You'll have name, location, and solution name. Under location, make sure that you've selected where you want your code to live, where you want all your projects to be. For me right now, the default's perfectly fine, and you can go with the default as well. But under name, let's give it something like UWP Test. Once you've done that, click OK. Now when you do that, it'll take a moment to create the project for you, and what it's doing is it's adding in all of the libraries that we need, and it's giving us a really excellent default starting place. Once that's done, I want you to notice the UWP starting window, and we have all sorts of links here, and they're all very useful links. This is great when you're first learning how to use this technology. However, we don't need this today. But in the future, you should check out these links and explore them. Go ahead and close the UWP test page. So on the right-hand side, you're going to see Solution Explorer. If it's not already open, if it's hidden like mine, go ahead and click on it to expose it, and then go down to where it says mainpage.xaml. Yep, that is pronounced XAML. We'll talk about that more later. Go ahead and double-click on that, and it will open up a preview. Now, if your preview fails to load, it may be because you have the newest version of UWP, but you don't have the newest version of Windows 10. You can either update your Windows 10, or you can go to Project, go to Properties, and go to Target Version, and set it to the next step down. If you don't have that, we can try some other installs to add that in there, but go ahead and bump this down, hit yes, save everything, go back to main page, and the designer should load up no problems. Now, you may notice down in the XAML window, you'll see a tag that says grid. In between those grid tags, I want you to type in rectangle, and I want you to give it a width of 500, and give it a height of 300, and then give it a fill of red, and then close that tag with a / angle bracket. If everything went right, you should see a red rectangle on your screen. To make sure that everything works correctly at this point, all you have to do is hit Control-Shift-S to save everything, and then, holding the Control key, press F5. This will run our application without going into debug mode. If you wait a moment, it will build, and then the application will launch. And when it does, you'll have this gloriously white window with a red rectangle in the middle. If everything works, you're ready to code.